Well, grace and peace, friends. It's good to be with you. I have with me today Kristin Langstraat. She is let me make sure I get this right. She's the System Director for Faith Community Relations with OhioHealth. And I'm speaking with her today about self-care during COVID-19. So, in a time while we're separated, in this time while we're separated, I've been interviewing various people that can speak about just kind of topics that we might be interested in, or especially for today, topics that can be really practically helpful for us during this time. And so today, like I said, we're talking about self-care during this coronavirus crisis. So if you're watching this from Church of the Savior, then you know we have an older congregation. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's just that I know as a millennial, there are just some areas in the lives of older adults, especially when it comes to health and given that many of us are in the high risk category for COVID-19, I'm just recognizing that I am less able to speak into some areas of that as other people are. So I've kind of recruited Kristin Langstraat to help us speak into that a little bit more. So, Kristin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Andy. My name's Kristin Langstraat. I work for OhioHealth. I've been there for about 8 years, and I'm also an elder in the West Ohio Annual Conference. In my role at OhioHealth, I serve in doing clinical pastoral education. So I work with students who are trained to be chaplains or just trained to be better pastors. And then I also reach out to various churches and other faith communities to talk about health and how we can care for each other and how we can sort of share God's love through the way that we minister to one another. So it's a great job, and I'm glad to be here with you today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, CPE is the one piece of seminary that I didn't really get to engage in. So that's going to be a later piece of my continuing education, I'm sure.
Yes, I do all the public shaming around it. So do see, it's like the best education you'll ever have.
Absolutely. That'll be coming down the line for me, I'm sure. So let's talk first about physical self-care. Just some of the basics. What can we do to reduce our risk of contracting COVID-19, especially for people over 60 years old or with some underlying health concerns? What are just some of the basic physical self-care practices that would help us out during this time?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, ironically, a lot of the things that we do to stay healthy during COVID-19 are things that we should be doing anyway. And I'm challenging myself to do some of that too, which is just to eat healthy foods, good fruits and vegetables, to get a good amount of sleep, which sometimes is hard when we're worried about all the things going on in the world, to move as much as we can. I know we're all stuck inside, but today, for example, is a beautiful day. And so my plan is when we get done with this call, I'm going to go for a nice long walk. But that's been a challenge for me to kind of get up and move. I think we all go through cycles of trying to figure out what this is all about. I've had days where I've been on the couch a lot, just sort of like not wanting to move, and other days where I'm a lot more active and doing projects at home. So keeping moving is a really important thing, getting good sleep, getting good nutrition. And then there's all the added extra things. I know that we should all be washing our hands all the time anyway, but most of us aren't great at that. So making sure that you're washing your hands, disinfecting surfaces. When you're going out, wearing a mask. I know that there are some people around who think that's an overreaction, and I don't care. I'm going to wear my mask anyway. And actually, I started wearing it when I'm on my walks too, because there are more people out walking as well, because that's some of the only exercise that we can get. So I've started to wear my masks out there as well. So it's just basically being careful, being attentive to your health. It's not easy because sometimes our minds talk back to us and we get stuck with stress and worry and things like that. But if we can keep doing those real basic things, that's really important.
Yeah. My wife's was a biology major. She has her bachelor's in biology, so she knows everything about hand washing and all of that. So the first thing she heard when this first started being a thing in the state, she said, "Do people not wash their hands? Is that not a thing that we already do?" So that's
I know. And that's, I mean, I'm a hospital chaplain, so I know how to wash my hands too, but I'm not, I mean, now I'm thinking about it so much more. So if I go out to the grocery store, I'm thinking about what surfaces I touched and who else might have touched them. And so I'm just, I'm using a lot of hand lotion too, because I'm washing my hands and sanitizing them with hand sanitizer too. So they get a little dry, but it does require a little bit more attention, I think, than we're used to giving it. But it's so important, and it's one of the best defenses, I think, against COVID is to just stay clean.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So, so physical self-care, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of a good thing that we already know a lot of the things we can do to take care of ourselves. We've been, my parents have been telling me that since I was a kid: stay active, eat healthy, and get enough sleep.
It's just actually doing it that can be the challenge.
Exactly,
Before
exactly.
and now. So yeah.
Yeah. So now thinking of thinking of physical self-care, we've heard all of that, but now let's think of mental or emotional self-care. You mentioned it being hard to sleep now for some people because anxiety is just kind of a palpable thing in the air. So what are some things that we can do? What are some practices, whatever you have in mind, that we can do to keep the anxiety at bay?
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, if only we could separate all these things, but I think the physical and the spiritual and the mental, they all work together. So I know that when I'm moving more during the day, I sleep better. So sometimes that's my motivation for making sure that I exercise, because I know that it'll help me sleep better. I don't really want to take a walk or be active, but I know it's going to pay off in the end. So again, getting that movement. I think talking to friends is so important right now. And I know that that can be difficult. It's difficult for me to try and figure out all the technology around it. And I I just started talking on Zoom with my parents in the last few weeks. And actually, it was easier than they thought it was going to be. They're doing great with it. And so, as much as people can figure that out, if it's with a computer or over the phone, even talking on the phone with people that you care about is really important. I
Mhm.
know a lot of people have grandkids and kids that they want to talk to and they can't because they live far away or they're kind of quarantined off from the folks that we know. And so sometimes FaceTime and all those technologies can be really, really good for those things. I think keeping in touch with people is so important, and it's obviously not the same because we're talking through a screen. We can't touch each other, and that's really hard. We can't hug each other, but still to know that somebody's there and that somebody cares for you, and sometimes just to be able to get your eyes on somebody and see them again and really know how they're doing can be really helpful. So, however, whatever it takes to try and figure out some of that technology, some of it's easier than others, but that's a really important thing. Um, for me, I think sometimes just remembering to breathe. I think I notice sometimes during the day that my shoulders are hunched up or that I'm stressed out, and so remembering to breathe. Another really important practice that seems like such a no duh, but being grateful. There's a lot of evidence that shows that if we're grateful, it really increases our resilience. So I we've often at the hospital done something called 3 good things. So before a meeting or even before I go to bed at night, to just concentrate on 3 good things that happen during the day. I think we're a little bit wired toward threat and toward thinking about things that are going wrong. And so retraining our brain to think about the blessings that we have in our life and the things that are going well and to be grateful to God for those things. It's such a simple practice, but it can really be life changing. So sometimes I'll have a gratitude journal where at the end of the day, I'll just be really intentional, not about thinking about anything that went wrong, but 3 really good things that went right. And it makes me go to bed feeling a little bit happier and like, okay, yes, COVID's going on, lots of scary things are going on, and good things are still happening, and that's great.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, I mean, I love music, so I listen to a lot of music throughout the day. I think everybody has stuff that they like or hobbies that they like, and as much as we can continue to do those things, I think it's really important. I got out and planted my garden yesterday, which was great. So various things that give us joy and that make us think about what we're grateful for, I think are really helpful right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah. Things that we all can, it's not none of it's complicated. It's just we gotta think about it, and we gotta do it.
Yep. I'm aware of how much time I can spend like watching TV or watching the news, thinking that that will give me some control over the events that are happening, which it doesn't. It just freaks me out a little bit more. So I need to be mindful about reallocating my time and using it for things that are healthy instead of obsessing over things that I can worry about. So that's a conscious choice that I have to make.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about it as well, is that how much I watch the news and how much good it's really doing for. It's good to stay informed, but how is it doing with my mental and emotional self-care, especially when we're staying home and if we're working from home and the TV is just in the other room. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we need to not assume that the situation's going to change really quickly. I mean, we've heard it 100 times. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So throughout the day, there's not going to be a lot of new news. So we can kind of get informed in the morning, get informed in the evening, maybe watch the evening news or something. But more than that, I'm not sure that that really adds to any knowledge that we have about anything. So I know I can relax on that a little bit. I don't need to pay as much attention as I probably do to that.
Yeah. 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 Thinking of, so that was those are a lot of just some good words about our mental, emotional self-care. More things that it's a lot of stuff that we already know about, but now more than ever, it's we just got to think about it and be intentional about putting those in place. So
Right.
I think you said a lot of that well, just to remind us.
Yep.
Thinking of our spiritual self-care now, obviously that's connected with mental and emotional self-care, but since I'm speaking as a pastor, and you as an ordained elder, and both of us within the church, we all know that we are all physically separated from our worshiping communities, and it's been really cool seeing all the different ways that churches all around West Ohio Conference and all around the country really have been trying to connect with their congregation. But even while we are physically separated, even with all of the different ways that our churches are trying to break those gaps and those barriers, what are some practices we can use to stay spiritually grounded during this
Yeah.
time?
Well, I think checking in with each other is so important. One thing I've become so aware of during this time of separation is how physical we are in our faith. So we have communion, which is a very physical thing. When we go to church, we're hugging people, we're touching each other, which now makes me go, what? Like, why did we touch each other so much? But that physical contact is really important for us. And baptism is a very physical kind of symbol. So I'm really feeling the loss of that. So I want to take seriously that that's a huge change for us, is that we aren't gathering physically, and there is some grief around that. But one way that I've kind of been being creative about it is, participating in my own worshiping community. So watching that online. And then also, at different times during the morning, since different faith communities worship at different times, it's been a great way for me to see what other people are doing. So whether that's other people in the West Ohio Conference or people that I'm friends with around the country who are pastors, just to kind of check in and see what they do for worship. That's been a wonderful thing, to be exposed to different traditions and different styles and things like that. I know a lot of churches are doing things like you're doing, so like YouTube videos or Bible studies or just different ways of gathering. My parents had a drive-through thing at their church, so they did Sunday morning worship, and everybody came in their cars and kept their windows rolled up and were really sanitary and safe about it, but still could see each other and wave to each other and just be happy to be in each other's presence, even though it looked really different. And then I think there are lots of online resources. So again, it's the technology piece, but the Upper Room has some nice resources. There's a site that I go to a lot called the Church Health Reader, and the email address, or the web address is chreader.org. And they have a lot of great spiritual resources that are connected with health, and are connected with aging if people are interested in those kinds of things. But they're good resources for congregations, but also just good resources around devotionals and different recipes and, various different things that we can do both physically and spiritually to kind of stay strong during this time.
Yeah. One last piece, you mentioned grief, and that's just in the last, I know it's been kind of bubbling under the surface the whole time, but I've seen it really come up just in the last week or so, more people talking about grief during this time. So could you speak a little bit into that, what we're grieving over and how we can carry that grief and care for ourselves?
Yeah, I think sometimes people connect grief with death, and I think it's more helpful to connect it with loss. And if we pay attention to the things that we've been losing at this time, there are a lot of things. We're losing human connection. If people have families, they're losing seeing their kids or their grandkids grow up. There are griefs around loss, around death. Some folks have had loved ones die from COVID, and that's huge, partly because a lot of folks can't see each other when someone's dying. Or I had a friend who went to a funeral for his mother-in-law the other day, and it was all virtual. And it was just really difficult for the family to kind of work through that. So I have a sense that we're going to be grieving some things that we didn't even know that we had lost until after this is over. There's going to be some delayed grief. But I guess I would recommend that people be patient with themselves. This is just a weird, weird moment in time. I've never been through anything like this before. I don't think anybody really has. And so to be patient and to know that things are going to be difficult, and yeah, we're reacting in weird ways, and it may not feel normal because it's not normal, and that's okay. But to just kind of rely on our faith, rely on each other as much as we can, and to remember that we're not alone in all this, even though some of us are more isolated than others. But to take seriously that we're losing things, maybe losing people around us, or just losing a sense of freedom or a sense of normalcy. Those are huge things for us to have changed. So I think it's important to be gentle with ourselves around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are some good words. I think those will be really helpful for our Church of the Savior friends. But this is all going to be public on YouTube, so anybody will be able to see this. So I really appreciate you sharing all that with us. Any final thoughts that you had in mind that I hadn't really asked about?
Just make sure you wash your hands.
Yep.
I mean, if people aren't feeling well, I know our health systems have been doing a lot better at doing telehealth visits. So the hospital is not the first place you could go. If you have a primary care doctor, connecting in that way is a really important thing to do so that you don't go to the hospital. If you have to go to the hospital, obviously we don't want to prevent you from doing that, but it's probably not the first place that you should go. So I just want to wish everybody the best in the midst of this. It's a difficult time, but we're strong, and we've got good faith communities, and these are the times that God is there for us and surrounds us with love and care, and we show that to each other by the way that we reach out to each other as well.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of a better way to end the interview like that. So again, I appreciate you coming on here, Kristin. I appreciate your words of wisdom, and I know people will as well. So with all of that said, for everyone watching, with all that said, we appreciate Kristin coming on, and I'll just say, grace and peace, friends.